Well, this morning's topic is the nonprofit future, at home, in person, or hybrid. I'm Jackie Gnepp, longtime consultant to the Executive Service Corps and management psychologist. The Executive Service Corps invited me to give this presentation following from a request from the Nonprofit Advisory Council, who was looking at what their future would be like and whether they would be changing how they worked. And so that's the impetus for this talk. It is very timely. And today being March 11th, 2021, it is the 1-year anniversary of when the pandemic was declared. Thank you for those of you who are watching this live online. I will take comments and questions at the end, so please hold your comments and questions until then. Okay, we are attempting to progress the slides here, pardon me. So why focus on the nonprofit future? Well, in the fairly recent past, most everyone worked in an office. And in the pandemic present, most of us have been working at home. The near future, of course, is looking up. We have been told that by May 2021, all adults who want to be vaccinated will be vaccinated. And so we're probably looking at some changes in the nonprofit future. The future beyond, of course, is much less certain. So we'll talk about that. Now, in terms of the near future, in theory, we could all return to working on site, but we've tasted work from home and most of us like it. So we could continue to work from home, but wait, there must have been a reason why we were working in the office for all those decades. So we have to consider that as well. Why did we bother to put on clothes, pack a lunch, and commute if there wasn't some value to being on site? So now in the near future, we have options. We could continue to work from home. We could go back to the office, or the most likely thing that will happen is that our nonprofits will become hybrid. Now, the future beyond is much less certain. We don't know many things, such as how long these vaccines will be effective, what proportion of the adult population will refuse to get them, when our children will be vaccinated, what will be the effect of the new variants and the mutations to come. So there's a lot we don't know. Plus, your nonprofit, many challenges, even in the best of times, that have nothing to do with the pandemic. So it's difficult to predict the future beyond the near future, but I will touch on that topic again at the end of my talk. So we transitioned to remote work and pretty successfully. How did nonprofits manage that? It's an interesting question because not only have we made the transition, but we have maintained productivity, which is pretty impressive. There are two theories about how we did this. I call them theory because and theory despite. So theory because says that we succeeded because of the pandemic. And theory despite says we succeeded despite the pandemic. So I want to begin by unpacking theory because. One version of that goes like this. I am so worried. I have colleagues that were laid off. What if my nonprofit fails? I can't be out of work now when no one hires during a pandemic. My nonprofit can't fail. People are counting on me. I am going to redouble all my efforts and work so hard. Another version of the because theory goes like this. There is nothing to do. My friends can't get together with me. I can't go to a concert. I can't even go to a restaurant. Like, there's nothing to do but work. I may as well just work. Another version is, oh, I am really tired, but I'm also wired. I didn't get as much done today as I would have liked. Well, it's late and it's really quiet. I don't have to get up at a particular time in the morning. If I worked hard, I bet I could knock out that report before 4 a.m. And then the final version of the because theory is, look, it is what it is. We have no choice. We just have to make it work. So if you're a fan of theory because, here's a heads up. Good workers will be less worried about their current jobs as the market heats up. And all workers will be less bored as more entertainment venues open up and there are more options to see our friends. We'll all sleep better at night as our daytime activities become more normal. And we will all have more options of all sorts. Now, personally, I am a much bigger fan of theory despite. That we succeeded, that we adapted to remote work despite the pandemic. So yes, you're worried about your job and your future. Yes, you were bored with staying at home and you had a million distractions at home. You exhausted yourself doing work at night, staying up late, working long hours. And yes, you had no choice but to make it work. Still, despite everything the pandemic threw at you, you maintained your productivity. So if we succeeded despite the pandemic, how did we do it? Well, the first thing to realize, of course, is not every nonprofit succeeded or even survived. So if your nonprofit did, you did 3 things right. First, you maintained trust. You built up trust before the pandemic ever hit, and that earned you loyalty and hard work and morale among your staff. Trust is the glue that holds us together in the best of times, but during a crisis, trust in leadership makes a huge difference. Secondly, leadership showed caring and compassion. People were stressed, they were worried, they had a lot of things going on, and leaders who were empathic and provided emotional support got dividends in people working hard and helping our nonprofits to succeed. And thirdly, workers get a lot of credit for maintaining their social connections to one another. We know that having a friend at work makes a real difference in people's happiness at work. But now surveys also tell us that employees who maintain their social connections to their colleagues were 3 times as likely as those who didn't to report that they were able to maintain their productivity. Those who felt poorly connected at work, they saw a significant drop in productivity. And those with the highest social connection to their colleagues, they actually saw an increase in productivity during the pandemic. So these are the three factors. Congratulations, if your nonprofit is still viable today, if you succeeded, you have shown resilience. And you have shown resilience through mutual support, trust, and caring and compassion. So well done. Now we want to know what hybrid looks like in practice. We know what on-site work looks like, and we now know what remote work looks like. But what does hybrid look like in practice? So there are basically three versions, and you can make many, many more. I don't want to limit you to three, but here are the three basic options. The first one is staggered on-site attendance. If not everyone is in the office at the same time, it's much easier to social distance. So some of your staff might come in Monday, Wednesday. Some of your staff might come in Tuesday, Thursday. So staggered on-site attendance. Another option is to divide your staff. Some work on-site, so that would be either in your office or out in the community, and some work remotely. And this would depend on what they do. And the third option is flexible scheduling of work. So this means that everyone comes into the office sometimes and works from home sometimes. We can be flexible about our location. And it might depend largely on employee preference, as well as what's needed on any given day. So you have options, but this is not a decision that can be made purely by the CEO or the board. To get the right hybrid for your nonprofit organization requires a conversation with everybody. So not everybody has an equal voice, but everybody has a say, because nonprofits have built up trust now with staff, with donors, with clients, and this would not be a good time to not maintain that trust. So we want to involve people in the decision. And what I recommend is that you hold a series of meetings, that you invite a facilitator, an external facilitator to help you with those meetings, and you get input from all these sources. So what are these meetings going to be like? Well, here's a possible agenda. You could review and renew your shared purpose, the work to be done, who does what and why, and then where work gets done. So in terms of shared purpose, leaders will want to articulate the organization's purpose, its mission, the big picture of the overall goals, and ensure people feel their work is uniquely connected and necessary to the success of the organization. People want a sense of shared purpose, and it's important for them to see how the work of their team fits into the picture as a whole. How do various work activities from different aspects of the organization fit together? How do they connect and intersect? People need to be reminded of mutual dependencies, because during the time we were away from each other, that we weren't all in the office together, it became harder to see how each and every job in the organization is important and how they all fit together. We also want to think about where work, what kind of work we do. Much of the work to be done is your mission, your program. Maybe for you, it's early childhood programs, or healthcare for the marginalized, or animal rescue, or the arts, or the millions of other things nonprofits do, like park management and literacy programs and outreach to the homeless and architectural preservation and more than I can possibly attempt to mention here, all those crucial and worthwhile activities that our nonprofits do. But of course, um, your nonprofits do a lot of other things. So you maintain your information technology and ensure data security. You create strategy and market plans. There's the whole human resources aspect of the work and the financial management and fundraising aspects of the work you do. So there's much more work that's not as easily seen. And you'll want to review all that. So having reviewed and renewed your shared purpose, the work to be done, who does what and why, now you're ready to talk about where work gets done. So some work obviously has to be done out in the community. And that's what you talk about. What kind of flexibility can there be for people whose work is primarily on site in the community? Can they shift their work hours? Can they work different hours on different days? Maybe there's some aspect of their work, such as report writing or documentation, that can be done from home one day a week. These are the conversations you'll have. And then other work is better done together in an office. But every day, or maybe 2 days a week, or 3, again, these are conversations. Where do these other aspects like information technology and marketing and strategy and human resources and finances and fundraising, where might they best take place? And do they always have to be in your central office? Now, there are advantages, clear advantages to working remotely, and there are other advantages to working co-located physically. So we'll briefly talk about these. So one advantage to working remotely is that it is actually more conducive to heads down work. The office environment is distracting. If you don't have doors that close, you see and hear other people, you hear their conversations, and you're aware of your own lack of privacy. And even if you do have a door that closes, people call meetings and they knock on your door. When I ask executives, where do you go when you have to get serious work done? Almost no one says, I go to the office. They say, I go home, I go to my club, I go to my favorite coffee shop. So one advantage to working remotely is the ability to concentrate and get work done. Another advantage is that it provides access to talent outside your metropolitan area. It expands the pool of talent that you can consider hiring. People who wouldn't be willing to commute a long distance to your location, but might be really good workers. So that's a clear advantage. It also increases diversity and fairness. So it allows people with disabilities, with medical conditions, with special needs to be accommodated in a more comfortable environment. And that's a real asset. And finally, it provides lifestyle advantages. These include the flexibility to manage family matters like childcare and elder care and personal appointments. So those are great. You also have the time saved in not commuting. Now, of course, on the flip side, some workers find that their home duties interfere with their ability to get work done, or they may not have a designated quiet space at home, or they may miss being around other people who are also working. And for all these people, we should remember that working remotely does not necessarily mean working from home. People can get their work done in a library or at their club or at a coffee shop during off-peak hours or at those co-working spaces that have become very popular in recent years. So there are options. Now, of course, there are also advantages to co-location. And the biggest advantage to being physically together is collaboration. Virtual collaboration is possible, and we have made it work during the pandemic, but it lacks some of the best features of actually being together. So there's the immediacy of bouncing ideas off one another, the excitement of co-creation, and the feeling of being part of a team. Another advantage is building relationships. We know that one of the major predictors of relationship is proximity. The more time you spend with people and the more frequently you interact with them, the closer your relationship gets. And that's very important at work. It is certainly possible to build virtual community, but there is nothing like face-to-face interaction for building rapport and solidifying friendships. And it would be a mistake to underestimate the value of just running into people in the hallway or in the kitchen or stopping by their desk for a chat. These small interactions grease the wheels for future teamwork and mutual assistance. And finally, making decisions and getting commitments are best done when we're together. So that brings us to the question of a hybrid. Hybrid is potentially the best of both worlds. It allows work that can be done from home to be done from home. And it has all those lifestyle advantages. For example, something that you don't know about the man on the left is that he has a dog at home. And although his dog can be a source of distraction, it's mostly a source of comfort and stress reduction when he has something difficult to work on or is under a lot of time pressure. And of course, hybrid also allows us to get together in a physical location for collaborative work. So some work is just best done when we're together in an office or out in the community, and hybrid allows for that to happen. Getting the best of both worlds from your hybrid plan requires getting your plan right. So different hybrid models have different advantages and will work for different organizations. So I'll just return briefly to what those three basic hybrid models are. Staggered on-site attendance involves distributing the days on-site to your staff. Everyone spends some time in the office. They just don't spend the same time in the office. They don't spend the time together all at once. The second option was some staff work on-site and some work remotely. This involves dividing your staff, presumably by the work they do, into on-site and off-site workers. And the last one is flexible scheduling of work location, which involves keeping a schedule of who's in the office when, but with flexible choice for the staff. Most nonprofits will choose a hybrid model for the reasons outlined earlier. Workers have tasted working from home, and we're not ready to give it up completely. And yet, we also miss the social aspect of work, and we recognize that some work is better carried out together. It is, however, possible to get hybrid wrong. And so I want to review a few caveats and considerations. The three I'll touch on are the needs of newer employees, the needs for new training, and the needs to maintain employee engagement. So more junior members of staff need to be in the office more often. They need more coaching, training, and mentoring. They need to learn how we do things here. They need face-to-face time to become part of the team, and they need visibility with senior leaders. Fortunately, most younger, newer members of staff are interested in spending more time in the office. And so that works out well. But if your hybrid plan is to only open your office 1 or 2 days a week, that won't work as well for your most junior members of staff. Then we come to the need for leadership training. Leaders and supervisors will need training in how to equalize treatment between staff who are working in the office and those working at home. Forgive me, Jim, if you will turn your video off, please. For example, if a meeting is called that involves both types of workers, meaning that some staff are attending by Zoom and some are physically together, you will want to hold that meeting so that all members are on Zoom. This will allow the people who are calling in remotely to not be looking at a conference room full of people, but rather to see each participant in their own square on the screen. Similarly, if you decide to cater that meeting, it would only be fair to also send some food to your remote workers, because they want to feel like they're part of everything and they're not missing the life of the office. Leaders and supervisors will also need new standards and guidelines for coaching and feedback. And they need to equalize these across on-site and off-site participants, on-site and off-site employees. So this is to avoid creating first-class and second-class staff with better treatment going to people in the office and lesser treatment going to those who are working from home or off-site. So sharing information and status updates, those things can be handled with video, email, apps like Slack and the phone. But there are some communications that really are best done in person. And that's something that leaders need to be trained on and figure out how to do. The third consideration is that we need to come together for big meetings and social activities. This is important for big thinking, aligning our activities, and reinforcing our evolving cultures. During the pandemic, we were able to maintain our relationships because we had built up strong ones over the years when we were all co-located in the community and in the office. But now, if some of us are going to be on site, or all of us are going to be partly on site, or we're going to be in the office on a staggered basis, we'll need to be able to feel like a team and a group, and most especially when our veteran employees leave and our new employees are hired. So we'll need this to ensure worker engagement with our organizations for retention, quality of work, and goodwill in the community. So I said at the start of this presentation that I would come back to touch on the future beyond, and that's what I'm going to do now. If the past was on site and the pandemic present was largely working from home, and the near future is likely to be hybrid, what can we say about the future beyond? Well, we don't know exactly what the future beyond will be. What we can say is that those who are most confident in predicting what the future will look like tend also to be the most incorrect. So you can plan for your distant future, but you don't plan for it by making plans for a future that you cannot know. You prepare for the future beyond by building in flexibility and agility. And you want to build this flexibility and agility into your workspace plans, but also into your thinking and into your organization as a whole, into your capabilities. So flexibility and agility is a big topic that I won't attempt today, but I do want to leave you with this message. If yours was a viable nonprofit before the pandemic, and you have shown the resilience to still be a viable nonprofit today, then I have to say nonprofits armed with the material that we covered today, you got this. Thank you for your time. At this point, I can take comments and questions from our live audience. I would say it's going to be a challenge to require staff to be in the office every day. Most workers are not excited about returning to be in the office on a daily basis. And because the job market will heat up and there will be opportunities for people to take new positions, those who are unhappy about being in the office every day will have options to take a job with more flexible employers. The other question that nonprofits need to ask themselves is, how safe is it to ask our employees to come back to the office, and when will it be safe? Have I put in systems of cleaning the air? Do I know that everyone in my office has been vaccinated? Do I have social distancing options? Am I going to require people to wear masks? If I have employees who are not vaccinated, is this not a stress on whatever healthcare I have provided for them? And how am I going to manage it if people get sick? So I don't know if I've touched on every item that you mentioned in that question, Michelle, but there are risks to having everyone return full time in terms both of everyone's physical health, their mental well-being and happiness, and retention over the long term.
My question is more specific to the work that we do at Executive Service Corps, and that is, what are the expectations of the clients, the nonprofits that we work with? What will they expect, or how will we know what they will expect? If they expect us to hold our meetings in person at a mutually convenient location. So I'm curious about how the work that we do will be affected.
Interestingly, Kathy, as time goes on and more of us are vaccinated, the risks may start to be to the client who hasn't chosen vaccination rather than to the consultants of the Executive Service Corps who are frequently up in years and have chosen to be vaccinated.
And there's more access to vaccinations for the older population.
But we need to know that even before the pandemic struck, that many ESC volunteers held meetings virtually. And so some of our clients are accustomed to that. Other questions?
As a past sales manager, I'm curious as to how it probably didn't apply to not-for-profits, but it must be difficult in corporations that require a sales team to be active for them to function in today's environment, particularly if they're hiring new salesmen. Have we thought about how the selling process goes on in the pandemic? And as it applies to for or not-for-profit, how do you approach new accounts or new donors?
I wonder if someone else might like to take that question.
Sure. So I can just say, we have a process for handling inquiries, which we have evolved and changed over time depending on results, and that will continue to happen. But our inquiry process never started with somebody showing up at the office in person, right? They call us or they fill out the form. So that part for us hasn't changed. And we've heard some experts speak earlier today about how it's important that in terms of development, we focus on what did she say? The old school is now the new school, meaning that relationship building with our supporters should be happening on an ongoing basis in a remote way. So writing notes, sending emails, making phone calls, as opposed to meeting in person. And I think I'll have to defer to her expertise because that's what she does all day, every day, and say that makes sense to me. Certainly, as that's been the only thing we can do, that's what we've been doing. But I also think there's going to be a growing expectation for that, particularly for organizations whose donors might be snowbirds or might live all over the world.
It's a great presentation, and sounds like there's no more questions. One thing is for sure, we're in a whole new environment today, and who knows what the future will hold, correct?
That's true.
We don't have a crystal ball, but I think it's a pretty good bet that we're going to see more and more people working in this hybrid environment moving forward.